Hello, YouTube. I hope that you are doing well, and I'm just getting my video set up on Facebook as well. So here we go, live to Facebook too. And tonight I do want to say that I found out that a good friend is no longer with us tonight. And it was not just him, but it was another young 19-year-old that also lost their lives last night for what? A good time? Crazy. And I know that they're not the only ones that lost their lives yesterday for reasons that I'm sure they would look at differently if they had the awareness that they do now with all that they have come back to. So, cheers to both of them. And also to say that, as I said in the last video I posted to YouTube, there are calls that you can actually make to cut souls free from the density of awareness that we can get stuck in when we are not fully connected to our I am that I am, or the Christ consciousness in between. And so I'm learning, and I asked Michael Seegers for some calls to be able to help my friend and the one he passed with be able to reach to the highest planes possible for them to be able to get where they need to go. And so I just want to say that if you know anyone that has passed, that you have the opportunity to be able to make some calls for them as well. If you are interested in really stepping into the teachings of the Ascended Masters and to be warriors of the light. And so I share that just because it's very real in my day. And then want to say that we're going to read about the Threefold Flame of Life tonight from Saint Germain on Alchemy. And the first section in book 3, which we have gotten to in our Thursday nights reading classes. And so we're going to talk about power tonight. And the quote that we start with says, "And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity," which is part of the reason that I do these readings, because karma is all about what we put out, we get back, but not just necessarily in this life, but the soul can not be created nor destroyed because it's energy. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transmuted. Just like if we understand what we truly are, then it opens a world of possibilities. And so I also do this because it holds me accountable to continually work through all of these sacred texts that we have access to, and I hope that you have been enjoying them as well. So I'll start the reading, and if you want to give the video a like, I do appreciate that. And we'll start with chapter 1, Power. Gracious men and women, persistency is recognized as a quality which eventuates in the manifestation of some aspect of perfection. The courage which men externalize by holding fast to a specific momentum in the face of every attempt to prevent its manifestation is a thing of beauty, a joy to every heart, and most wondrous to behold. The very thought of power in itself brings delight to the hearts of men. The power of the universe depicted in the heavens tells men of that seemingly far-off aspect of God for which their souls hunger, but onto which it appears impossible to draw nigh. Hope, together with the element of faith, has enabled men to release some degree of power into their worlds and to subject it to their control. Power defined. Now, power has taken many forms. Abuses have marred its use, whereas virtue has enhanced it. Tyrants have exploited it, and politics and religion have been molded around the star of power blazing in the firmament of society. The primary types of power are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy in various forms. There is electrical, chemical, nuclear, elemental, and cosmic power. And there is temporal power, consisting of social influences and mass pressures, governmental and religious authority. Meanwhile, karmic power affects everyone's status, attainment, and progress. All power is interrelated. Some is stored, some is static, some is dynamic and subject to a rapid decay rate. All power is subject to two primary qualifications under the classification of relativity: divine and human, or cosmic universal and material transitory. The Maltese Cross, emblem of my dedication to the cause of freedom, is a balanced thought form which may be used to illustrate the qualifications of power. As many realize, a cross symbolizes the meeting of two planes of consciousness. The horizontal bar representing the plane of the human consciousness, the plane of the ego, and the vertical bar representing the energies of God descending from the realm of spirit into the quadrants of matter. The center where the two lines intersect is the point, orifice, where the energies of heaven are released to the earth, and in truth, it is at this point, which is actually the point of the qualification of power, that great alertness must be maintained by all who use power in its many aspects, including its organic and inorganic forms. There is a picture of the Maltese Cross further on that I will just show you now because we're talking about it and I want you to understand what that looks like. So that is the Maltese Cross there, and then that's the depiction of the energies and how it crosses. So just so you knew. I will also say that that center point, I do believe, is the heart, which we'll get into more. But Drunvalo Melchizedek has a book called Living in the Heart. And in that, he actually talks about a point where surgeons know they cannot touch it, because if they do, it's lights out for the patient. And I don't know for sure, but before I used to think it was where the soul sat. And now that we understand that the threefold flame is in the secret chamber of the heart, which is right behind the heart, I'm not sure specifically whether that is true to be the point where the I am that I am presence and Christ consciousness chord into the 3D form that we are. But it's my suspicion that the point that would be lights out would be where the God spark connects to the higher power. But it's my hypothesis. I will hopefully be able to say for sure with more certainty at some point, but I share what I believe at this point and see what you feel about that, because truth is resonant. So we feel it. And you either know that it resonates for you or that it doesn't. And so you can take it, leave it, or put it to the side and pick it up later if you want to play with it and see what it means to and for you. So, the power of speech itself, the power in the spoken word, and the power of the word, whether released by pen or edict of sword, which Michael says is the sacred word, changes the course of history and alters the lives of those affected by its release. Whatever its subsequent use or abuse, the tangled threads of power have always flowed, symbolically and actually, from the orifice of the cross. The Maltese Cross is a symbol of perfect balance, both in the alignment of the four planes of matter and the four cosmic forces thereof, and in the inner and outer expression of God's Spirit within the souls of his own. As such, the Maltese Cross illustrates the drawing forth of light's energy and consciousness from on high through the north arm, for the manifestation in the world of form of God's omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence, through the west, south, and east arms respectively. And as we shall soon see, in this cosmic interchange between God and man, the universal light is beamed forth, as above, so below. To the right, to the left, and in the center is a perfect equilibrium of power, wisdom, and love. Blessed ones, it is easy to complicate that which is simple, but it is often most difficult to simplify that which is really complicated. This I shall attempt to do for you in this study. Bear in mind that when a child first begins the study of arithmetic, he is dealing with simple sums and the concrete. In his world of counting things, he can little conceive of the intricate threads of logarithms and abstract equations. Man should then realize that the perfectionment of the soul in God must take into account the training of the child man and the fact that so-called cradles of negation, example, compartments of the world of form, have been created as classrooms or schools of soul testing where transmutation and noble changes can be effected that will result in an expansion of the flame of freedom, raising every son of liberty into the totality of his identity and divine manhood. In simplifying the understanding concerning the release of power, it will be shown that the bodies of man, for by definition, are receptacles of that power. Thus, his physical, mental, emotional, and etheric sheaths of consciousness are recipients of the charge of power that is released through the electronic pattern of the Maltese Cross. For the purpose of this study, it is best that we consider the dawn, the beginning of each day, as the arbitrary point of origin for power's release. When self-conscious awareness once again floods the altar of individuality and men begin again to think and to perceive. For this too is an employment of power, but one which is often abused by neglect. And I have learned that on the cosmic clock, which is a amazing tool that the teachings of the Ascended Masters offer, Chelas of the Path, which Chela is another name for students. In that, what Michael has explained to me, because he has been a huge mentor to me, as I often mention, but he actually says that our karma drops every day at 3 a.m. So that is when we face a new dose of karma from our past incarnations and all of that which kind of settles down for the day. And then depending on when your birthday is as well, there's that day in the month when you get more of your karma dropping onto the cosmic clock. So it's an advanced teaching. But if we get a basic understanding of the fact that it's more powerful to do decrees in the morning simply because our karma drops in the morning. And so if we can set ourselves up to really fly early on, we can clear out what is dropped early on, and then we can really go forward and then clear more of it without having to face that which dropped in the morning, plus everything that was accumulated and already there for us to work through too. So in case that's useful. Few today are aware of the degree of power which God has conferred upon man through the gift of consciousness. Few are aware that they possess the power of focalization and intensification in the proper exercise of their attention through individual consciousness. Nor do they realize that the interpretive and discriminatory action of the God Self enables them to take firm hold of the reins of power, to be in control of their lives, and to be less distracted by the social and karmic responsibilities that are daily thrust upon them. Self-dominion, your reins of power. The statement made of old, "He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city." We've got our first footnote. How are you doing tonight? I hope you're well. We are in, that was Proverbs 16:32. The statement made of old, "He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city." Proverbs 16:32 should be understood. Were it so, more adepts and masters would arise in every generation to take the reins of dominion over themselves and their worlds. It is an act of utter compassion for universal law and for universal love, for you to obtain dominion over the finite self. When this happens in your life, and happen it shall as the law is made known, you will realize that you cannot remain a novice and still be a master. Although you live in the plane of the human consciousness, you must not be subject to its depredations. Inasmuch as the world is filled with idle minds and idling minds, even when housed in a dedicated consciousness, are often tools of the sinister force, the devil's workshop, as they say. It behooves the student of the deeper truth to recognize that he alone can and must govern his own world through the right use of power. In this sphere of cosmic coexistence, where the energies of the macrocosm and the microcosm flow as one, there is a daily release of great power from the Godhead and a subsequent abuse of that power by mankind. Some men watch the abuses of others and then respond with an equal or greater abuse of power. Thus they gauge their power train according to the qualifications of power by individuals and society. This is not action, but reaction. Others, sometimes consciously and deliberately, and at times thoughtlessly or unconsciously, generate discordant thought forms and auric emanations from their beings through the triggering action of bad habits and momentums. I would like to list some of these abuses of power in order that you might perceive how people become unwitting tools of subtle qualities of negation, and how they take in, amplify, and discharge this nauseous substance into the planetary atmosphere. First, there is boredom, an indifferent state of mind wherein all seems quite profitless to the individual who cannot see beyond the vanity of this world to the reality of the next. In this disenfranchising state, akin to a vacuum, men denude their souls of validity. Then there is dissatisfaction, in which men assess their own progress or lack of it, and by dishonesty in self or self deceit, are unwilling to admit their role in fashioning their own weaknesses. Instead, they effect a transfer of responsibility to others, assigning them the blame for their own failures or lack of progress, often carried out on a subconscious level. This ruse of the carnal mind remains the primary cause of personal stagnation. Then, too, there are numerous types of fear. One of its most devastating forms, which I desire to call to your attention, is that which even the sincere sometimes attribute to the Godhead, given men's propensity to fashion their gods after themselves. It is the altogether human quality of whimsy, which stems from a deep-seated insecurity. Although they themselves have the whimsical nature, they cannot bear the thought of being subject to a whimsical God. Therefore, they conclude, for dark and unclear reasons, unknown even to themselves, that their life streams are not in favor with the universe, and that they must withdraw therefrom. In this anxious frame of mind, they may tend toward aggressive forms of rebellion, or their attitude may become one of servility, wherein they easily tolerate feelings of lethargy, depression, and hopelessness. There is the vibration of doubt, which we would also touch upon. Doubt stems from fear and from a real lack of self-knowledge, while self-doubt, as lurking suspicion, colors one's doubts of everyone else. Some who believe themselves to be fearless and in possession of greater knowledge than they in fact have, may not accept the statement I am making. Nevertheless, I shall affirm its truth. And when, in the light of greater understanding, men will have dispelled their own self-ignorance, their doubts, too, will fly out the window. But men must allow themselves time enough to achieve this. As the Master said, "In your patience possesses ye your soul. In your patience possess ye your souls." Luke 21:19. Now, there are many other traits and influences that we could go into here, but I do not choose to prolong the enumeration of negatives to which mankind are host. Rather, I would point out, on the basis of a thorough analysis of those I have listed, that mankind's abuses of power are created primarily as a result of their ignorance and misunderstanding of the laws governing the flow and use of energy. Moreover, to the great masses inhabiting the planet, from whom even a rudimentary knowledge of the science of karma has been withheld, it is somewhat difficult to explain the cycles of reincarnation that predestine the return of abused power to the one who has misused it. The horror with which some who profess to be religious view any doctrine that is not approved by the church of their fathers is a millstone about their necks. How unfortunate! For they for if they are to be free from the shackles of an ancient dogma, they must open wide the doors of their mind without fear and without prejudice. Oneness of life, four lower bodies. Now it must be understood with cherishment that all life is one, and that an abuse of power on the part of any member of the world body has its effect on all. But by a like token, the correct use of power by anyone upon the planet brings its blessings to all. Power is energy. Energy stored in the physical body can be measured as the sum total of the energy content of all the body cells. When this energy is spent, it becomes necessary to, in some way, reinfuse the cells with energy in order to renew the power of the body. To infuse the body cells with new and vital energy when those cells are already clogged with accumulations of negatively qualified substance, residual deposits of power misused through wrong thought and feeling, is to partially negate the flow of energy in the body. This can cause fatigue or a loss of power, which, if unchecked, eventually results in so called death, the cessation of the flow of power from the presence to the physical form. Consider the value of flushing out these accumulations by spiritual electronics, and then gradually building up the light in the four lower bodies by the fourfold alchemy of the Maltese Cross and the science of the spoken word. Thus, it is most necessary to understand the relationship of the four lower bodies as you pursue the building of the temple of man as a wise master builder. The mental body interpenetrates the physical body as water interpenetrates a sponge. Having its own reservoir of power, it is not dependent upon the physical body except as the focal point for the flow and distribution of power. Yet the four lower bodies of man are so interrelated that if the mental body is to operate at optimum efficiency, the other three must be in perfect alignment with it and with each other. The densities that the mental body encounters in the physical body, such as the harmful residue of nicotine, drugs, and impure food, or even the substance of fear, doubt, and mental rebellion accumulated from past lives, clog the brain cells and imprison the light of the atom, effectively impeding the free flow of light to the physical consciousness and thereby impairing the function of the mental faculties. When misused, the power of the emotional body becomes the most violent and volatile of the four lower bodies. When agitated by undisciplined feelings, these emotional energies have a tendency to lead men astray in their thinking and in their actions. The flow of power into the mental body is also not into. The flow of power to the mental body is also greatly subject to the power of the etheric or memory body. In memory's storehouse, the writings of all past action is present and previous. In memory's storehouse, the writings of all past actions in present and previous embodiments stand as an electronic record of considerable weight and influence. I did make a note that I believe that is actually in reference to the Akashic records, but I will find that out and just ask you whether that resonates or not, because truth does, as I ring the bell. So lovely. The power of this record, together with the momentums generated by the misuse of energy, is a subtle pressure that affects the present moment for good or for ill, relatively speaking, unless it is brought under the control of the balancing power of the great God flame within the heart, the immortal flame of power, wisdom, and love. The Maltese Cross, the symbol of God-controlled power. The Maltese Cross, symbol of the perfect balance of the God flame, as in heaven, so on earth, provides a thought and energy matrix whereby the ill effects of personal and planetary karma can be brought under control and the power of virtue released in their place, that mankind's use of power might no longer corrupt life on earth. It has been said that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton to Bishop Mandel Cretan, the 5th of April in 1887, quoted in John Bartlett and Emily Morrison Beck's edition of Familiar Quotations, a collection of passages, phrases, and proverbs traced to their sources in ancient and modern literature. 14th edition, revised and enlisted. ENL? Is that enlisted? I've never known that. Boston, Little, Brown and Co., 1968, page 750. That was a lot. I've heard that expression many times within the John Maxwell team, but I didn't know its source, and I don't know specifically how much more I know about it now that I've read all of that. Power can be used as the bow of the infinite archer to release an arrow of perfection into the heart of man's goal of happiness. As the pursuit of happiness is an acknowledged treasure, let all who would permanently enjoy it ponder the Maltese Cross as a simple thought form through which great truths may be revealed for the blessing of all. Looking at the Maltese Cross placed upright before us, we see that the four symmetrical arms extending from the center are triangular in shape, wide at the outside, giving the appearance of a fanning action. The upper or north arm descending to the center resembles the upper vessel of an hourglass. Actually, it is a funnel through which the great energies of God, the power of God, are descending into the cup, chalice of being. The wide opening reminds us of the infinite energies of the source and of God's ability to convey these to man. Therefore, we know that we need not accept limitation in any form, whether in receiving or giving the limitless light of cosmos. The point of qualification at the center of the cross indicates that you must always consciously determine within your heart and mind to qualify your God-given energy with the purity of the divine intent and with the virtues of your Christ identity. You need not be weak or weakened when confronted by waves of discordant energy, whether your own or another's, nor is it necessary for you to be rude in your rebuttal of human error, for it is not the person but the impersonal energy personally misdirected that must be challenged. The Maltese Cross, symbol of the perfect balance of God flame, as in heaven, so on earth, provides a thought and energy matrix whereby the ill effects of personal and planetary karma can be brought under control and the power of virtue released in their place, that mankind's use of power might no longer corrupt life on earth. And then the Maltese Cross, focus of the distribution of energy from spirit to matter. Macrocosm, day side of life, energies of spirit descend through the north arm, which is white. Orifice is the nexus of conscious being, a point of qualification. The east or positive arm is love, pink. South arm is wisdom, yellow. And the west or negative arm is the power, blue. So these would be colored differently, and this would be white. The energies of spirit coalesce as matter through the three lower arms. And that would be why within the sacred chamber of the heart, or within the heart, we've got the threefold flame, which is wisdom, love, and power, which when in color would be the blue for power, yellow for wisdom, and pink for love. So that's really what we're talking about tonight, just in case it's helpful. Therefore, establish yourself in a firm, unyielding consciousness that rejects evil as the lie of man's misqualification, and as you breathe in the essence of the sacred fire, flower of power, determine to strip that lie of its negative power manifesting as thorns of abuse. It must be recognized that when the energy action descends from God to man through the upper arm, narrowing through the funnel to flow into the crucible of being at the point of the cross, it passes through the nexus and fans out into the three lower triangles to manifest as power, wisdom, and love in the world of material form. That also corresponds to Carolyn Mace's teaching about the chakras and how the heart is the bridge between the throat, third eye, and crown, and then moving down to the solar plexus, which is your willpower, sacral, which is your creativity, sex, and money, and then your root chakra at the base of your spine, which is your sense of belonging in this world. And how she talks about the heart being how we actually cross the bridge from an idea into form. Because when we actually start feeling our idea that we're birthing in our belly, and we actually have the attachment of the, like, what if it actually works? That's because it's bypassed the heart and is now moving into the lower chakras that actually will help us, literally, if you think about it from a birthing perspective, give birth to that which previously came to us maybe through the crown of an inspired idea, down through the third eye, out through expression, which you don't want to share that which you're working on prematurely, because energy leaks can mean that you create a stillborn, because if it gets interfered with before you've fallen in love with it, because someone else's doubt activates or triggers your doubt that was just waiting to say, well, I don't know if it's going to work, that can stop us from actually getting it down to the solar plexus, sacral, and down to the root. So here we go. Where am I? It must be recognized that when the energy action descends from God to man through the upper arm, narrowing through the funnel to flow into the crucible of being at the point of the cross, it passes through the nexus and fans out into the three lower triangles to manifest as power, wisdom, and love in the world of material form. Thus, the infinite energies of God are molded by the qualifications of man's attention focused at the heart of the cross, the seat of his conscious mind. By this means, power congeals in the physical world, taking the form of the thoughts, the feelings, the acts, and the spoken word of man, the release of its potential being entirely dependent upon the motivation and the will of his consciousness. The balance between the upper arm, which receives the energies of spirit, and the three lower arms, through which spirit's energies coalesce both in and as matter, provides for the balanced manifestation of God's power as above, so below. From the planes of primary causation to the physical effect, as it is taught with the Hermetic science. If man's qualification of his quotient of spiritual energy released over the crystal cord from the I Am presence to the heart chakra were retained in purity from the moment it entered the crucible of his consciousness, all that is in manifestation in the microcosm would reflect the perfection of the macrocosm. Think of that. The energies of the three lower arms fanning out in a balanced action from the center of the Maltese Cross proceed then from the plane of pure being into the form or action phase of the threefold flame. Power by itself in the left arm retains the negative polarity unless and until it is qualified with the positive polarity of divine love in the right arm. Ponder well this statement. Now the left arm of the cross denotes the negative or minus charge of spiritual energy qualified by the blue flame of power. The right arm denotes the positive or plus charge qualified by the pink flame of love, and the lower arm, denoting the central axis of the plus and minus flame, is qualified by the golden flame of illumination, which imbues both the positive and negative poles with wisdom's God direction and power, not power, and purpose. So I'll read it again. And the lower arm, denoting the central axis of the plus and minus fling, is qualified by the golden flame of illumination, which imbues both the positive and negative poles with wisdom's God direction and power. Therefore, all that is below in the microcosm is intended to be a threefold manifestation of the sacred fire that descends from above in the macrocosm. The energy released from the Godhead, the day star from on high, 2 Peter 1:19, the lodestone of power, or the I am presence, scintillating in the octaves of perfection, immediately upon entering the lower octaves of matter, assumes the negative pole of being in what is called the night side of manifestation. This is the minus side of life, where the plus fling of potential released from spirit enters into material qualification. The energies garnered in spirit, when preceded by right thought in the left arm, gain the impetus of God virtue by the power of love's cohesion and attraction as they are released into action through the right arm. This left right push pull action can be illustrated through the principle of the slingshot, wherein the stone in the sling is withdrawn from the Y in a negative pull in order to secure the necessary impetus of power to drive home the shot through a positive release. You will recall that it is written in the first chapter of Genesis that the Lord God made the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. Genesis 1:16. The north arm of the cross represents the day side of being, and the three lower arms the night side. The left arm of the Maltese Cross, being the negative arm of the Trinity in form, is itself symbolical of the negative side of life in which the three lower arms are suspended. Then, too, it is the left arm that denotes the physical nature of man as a cradle or crucible, into which God pours his power as a condensation of the fury intensity of his light. This he does in the hope that man will rise above that cradle crucible and transcend the world of experience which the alchemist perceives as the night side of life, a temporal densification of spirit, a laboratory in matter where he is obliged to prove the scientific laws of being in order to return to the permanent abode of spirit. It is out of the dense spheres of this world of experience, which the Hindus refer to as the world of Maya, that the soul of man must rise, purified and made white, into the purity of the great God flame of his being. The Maltese Cross has another significance. When the perfect integration of God and man is complete, there is a sunburst effect emitting light from the dot at the center of the cross. Within the cosmic circle of allness, at the dot symbolical of individuality, there is focus, the balance of spirit and matter, a divine oneness of all planes, a union of the Father, Mother, God fulfilling the spirals of Alpha and Omega. Through the sacred heart of the soul, wed to the universal Christ in the alchemical marriage, the light is come, the light does shine. God is in truth the all-in-one, not only in principle but also in practical application. For this God, whose Christ, as Paul said, is all and in all, is the all in all within the individualized manifestation made in his image and likeness. What is COL? I'm going to have to get better at biblical references. Sorry. COL 3:11, 1 Corinthians 15:28, Genesis 1:26-27. I do my best, but I don't always get it right. I hope it gives you permission to do the same and hold tight. Thus the fullness of God's kingdom conferred upon his sons and daughters. Thus, through the pattern of the Maltese Cross, is the concept of thine is the power realized. God's power, as his light energy consciousness, is then entrusted to every man, and it is in the right use of this power in every way, according to the spiritual physical laws of alchemy, which I herewith declare to you in part, leaving the rest to your mystical communion in cosmos, that man can surely come to understand more of the universe and obtain the victory of eternal life. I realized that my writings on alchemy were a disappointment to some students because of their faulty levels of expectation. Some actually became obsessed with the idea that I would give them some form of thaumaturgical formula whereby, upon making certain Kabbalistic signs in the air and reciting the secret word or words, precious stones and even money would materialize in their hands as if out of thin air. I doubt not that if this were to be conferred upon all, it would be the greatest abuse of power conceivable, both on my part and on the part of the universe itself. For if men think that they have karmic responsibilities in the use of that power which they already have, let them consider for a moment what responsibilities they should have if their power were increased. Call not so much for an increase in power, then, as for a better understanding of how to use that power which you already have, and observe how the universe, in all its great wisdom, bursting with desire to give you the vital freshness of being, will confer upon you by direct apprehension those alchemical secrets which will assure you not a continuing abuse, but a correct and glorious use of the power of God unto salvation for all. May his peace be with you as I join you in the release of greater understanding concerning your wise dominion of illumination's flame. Your obedient friend of freedom, Saint Germain. When I interviewed Bishop Larry Gators, I will say that illumination is often referenced in most sacred texts, and what he had mentioned that made a lot of sense and yet is interesting because illumination is not used in place of illumination, but he was saying about illumination being false light and illumination being true light. So whenever I read illumination, there's the part of me that thinks of that and then wants to say illumination instead. So whether I just take it upon myself to shift that or not, I'm not sure. We are 15 more minutes until the end of our time together, so I'm going to start getting into wisdom with you tonight, and it will take us quite a lot further into this, but we'll do as much as we can. So I'm grateful that you've joined me tonight, and we'll get exactly what you need from this. And please know too, it is imbued with light codes that you are receiving simply by being exposed to it, as am I. So grateful we're sharing the experience. Wisdom, Chapter 2. To the precious disciples of Christ and his mysteries, I come bearing the grail of our Lord. Listen well, lest you skip over the unspoken, the unwritten, the principal thing. Therefore, in thy self-discovery, know also that we are one. Wisdom defined. Wisdom is derived from the phrase wise dominion, and it is to God's own flame of holy illumination, that we dedicate this portion of our trilogy. The age-old admonition, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Proverbs 4:7 relates to the acquisition of divine wisdom. Let me here make a distinction between wisdom and knowledge. There are men and women who can easily retain the lines of entire series of plays, and they can speak those lines before a sizable audience with great accuracy and dramatic impact. These same individuals would be at a loss if they were to be called upon to write the play or to assemble the words and ideas which embody its continuity. Thus, it is not sufficient to possess mere knowledge based on the power of the memory to retain experience. Memory alone does not assure man the proper use or release of stored knowledge at the precise moment when it is needed, nor does it assure mankind the exercise of proper judgment or wisdom once the facts are made available. Re-embodiment, keystone in the arc of being. Now, as I have earlier mentioned, it would be most beneficial if the human monad would refrain from judgment in matters of cosmic doctrine, and even better if he could universally accept the reality of re-embodiment. For it is in the acceptance of this fact of life that he will truly discern the wisdom of the ages and more easily understand his reason for being. It is most difficult for people in any age observing, in the lifespan of a comparatively few short years, a series of events relative to the personal self, to be able to judge the world in which they live and the society from which they have derived both bane and blessing, and then to be able to perceive matters pertaining to the spirit and properly assess them. By correctly understanding and accepting his own re embodiment, the individual develops a cosmic sense of the continuity of self, past, present, and future, and is better equipped to see behind the surface effects of today's circumstances the underlying personal causes that stretch back across the dust of centuries. Simply because men lack conscious memory of a previous existence does not deny the validity of this truth. Many have experienced the sudden feeling of having done before that which they are doing for the first time in his life. Others recall in a flash of recognition, déjà vu, that they have seen a face or place before. Then, of course, there is love at first sight, which is to be explained by soul recognition from past lives or inner level awareness. Many have noted with interest the incidence of genius, that some call a gift or talent in art, music, and science, or other aptitudes that appear at an early age, indicating the soul's resumption of the broken thread of identity. Modern physicians take note of the distinct personality of babies on the day of their birth. And all over the world, fascinating stories have been documented concerning people's recall of vivid scenes and experiences from a past life. Man has been justifiably skeptical of some of this, yet truth reveals itself not as a pseudoscience, but as the very science of being without end. Think how glorious, how full of hope life can be to all who therefore see before them not death, but only self transformation as the alchemy of positive change. To all who see in the law of re embodiment an opportunity for the slow learners and the rebellious to recover in new dignity from error's stains, rising at last from the astral sea of identity, the personal morass of morality, into the morning of eternal hope and the crown of victorious life. A world fabricated to be the platform for billions of life streams, all created as mere moths destined to fall into the flame and be consumed. A world that is a kaleidoscope of changing scenes and ideas drifting, sans stability, in an endless sea of spinning nebulae and swirling gases, holds no promise for the children of the sun other than to eat, drink, and be merry, and to die like mortals. Isaiah 22:13, Luke 12:19, 1 Corinthians 15:32. What marvel that men have accepted any religion at all when the factor of re-embodiment is denied by the religions and many of their leaders. You see, it was by removing this teaching from the so-called mysteries of the early church that there came into existence the very grave distortions of life's purposes in both church and state that have challenged society to the present day. When the wisdom of God is imparted to man, it makes him aware of the fact that the sum total of all that he is, whether he likes it or not, is the result of his own doings. He sees on the instant the need as well as the power to change his ways and to draw himself into alignment with cosmic law. Faith in God mounts up, for hope joins hands with faith, and the personal mistakes of the past appear to be possible of present rectification. The understanding of current failures reveals them to be the result of wrongful acts, human error, rather than a deliberate resistance to life, and men and women are enabled once again to enter the mainstream of life and to participate in a cosmic drama wherein divine wisdom eventuates in a union of such celestial dimension as to stagger the imagination. The greatest of rockets, ancient and modern, have a platform or launching pad from which they thrust off into the heavens. So it is with men and women in their search for cosmic truth. From the platform of present existence, they must seek and find the threads of cosmic light that will lead them through the golden door and beyond to etheric realms where blazes illumination's flame. Thus, from wisdom's fount, As well as inner study, the seeking, striving ones must learn to see God in action in themselves and summon Him to take command of their affairs on earth. How great is the suffering that Christians have endured through the elimination of this one point of spiritual truth. By denying re embodiment, they have denied their souls the keystone in the arc of being. You see, there are certain fine points of cosmic law that, in a relative sense, are not as important as this one. Man can deny some specifics without suffering too much damage, but to deny the truth of the continuity of his own being, its span of previous existence, and its future glorious destiny is to cut himself off from the basic premise of life. I have to admit, I've never been able to get into religion for the notion of reincarnation not being real, which never resonated for me, and then sin as well. And I love Don Miguel Ruiz's definition of sin being anything we speak against ourselves or anyone else, being out of alignment with the truth. So I don't know about you, but we will read the next section as well. The eternal now, doorway to the future. The eternal now is more important than either the past or the future. It is the doorway into the future, even as it is memory's link to all that passes through the heart of man's experience. Beloved one's eternal life is divine wisdom, for by the acquisition of many fragments of eternal life, segmented as lifetimes, man has stored up for himself treasures in the heaven of being. Matthew 6:20. Accordingly, the guidelines of the Ascended Masters' universities for the training of souls in the way of personal adeptship are firmly fixed, based on the great law of experience, the cumulative record in the great causal body of the universe. These guidelines are drawn not only from the life events of one individual and the many, but from the net gain of empirical knowledge, as well as the gnosis derived from the experiences of all who have mastered the threefold flame in the time-space continuum and ascended to higher dimensions. One of the most important features of the world's universities is that they are repositories for the many doings of mankind, records of the historical stream and the thought evolution of the race, and by their faculties and libraries, they possess the means of communicating this treasury of codified knowledge so that it becomes a part of the mental wealth of their students and the forward movement of the planet. Now consider the entire universe is, in fact, and configuration, a depository of cosmic law. And the most wonderful thing about this cosmic university is that all who will attend, and the most wonderful thing about this cosmic university is that all who will may attend and drink of its storehouse of knowledge. In the retreats of the Great White Brotherhood, one of the first lectures the masters give their freshman classes, by way of correcting the misconceptions resulting from a common doctrinal error, is on the false belief that all things terminate at death. If death or illness were to be permanent, if human discord, sin, and unhappiness were to remain as an unremovable stain upon the soul, the master of a man's destiny and their influences could not be broken here or hereafter. If life's opportunities were to cease by the calamity of sudden and untimely death, no further chapters to be written in the book of life, then individual man could never assimilate the wondrous blessings held in store for all by the mind of God. Such a cruel turn of fate could not be conceived by the God of love, whose mercies endure beyond the grave. Through the soul's reincarnation, her return to the plane of cause and effect, where she has accounts to settle, imbalances to resolve, more power, wisdom, and love to release from her heart for the blessing of many life streams, the God of mercy extends opportunity to try and try again, and to prove that all death and sorrow, sin and stain can be dissolved in the sacred fires of the Holy Spirit. By right choice and his gracious violet flame, with the working knowledge of the alchemy of the spoken word, souls born again may live to love again, and forge and win their immortality. In their cases, the masters point out, then, that the first and greatest contribution of God to man is the gift of life as a continuum, identity preserved through the divine spark, the threefold flame of life, and the second, which is like unto it, is the free gift, or is the gift of free will, in the exercise of power, wisdom, and love, choosing step by step eternal life. Choosing step by step eternal life. Alas, the densities and opacities of the world of form, spread over the human mind as a mask of imperfection, have for untold generations robbed mankind of this his birthright of spiritual wisdom and experience onto the glories of the endless day. If we were to read the next part of that, it would take us a little bit after 8, but I've had a little bit of side chat along the way. The etheric realm, upper and lower strata. Let me take you then into the new levels of awareness, where we will confront certain facts as yet little known by people at large. Many have thought about the existence of other worlds and other civilizations. Some have speculated concerning the penetrability of matter and the simultaneity of force fields in time and space, whereby other worlds might co-occupy the position of this blessed earth, yet in other dimensions. When the laws of frequencies and wave emanations are better understood by the scientists of the world, the facts of this reality will be revealed. At this writing, it is my intent to speak briefly of the etheric realm. Upon departing from the physical world and drawing their last allotted breath, the spirits of men are often taken into the etheric realm, a higher octave of the matter plane corresponding to their more refined or finer etheric body, which to them has the solid appearance of the physical. Here are scenes of nature, the beauty of earth, sea, and sky, as well as towns and buildings constructed like those on earth. Verily, an entire band of frequencies in the similitude of that to which these departed souls have been accustomed on earth, created for their comfort and the continuity of their sense of self, as well as their eventual transition to worlds beyond. The etheric octave has many strata, or levels of consciousness. Some who reach it may be said to live on split levels, for they move from one sphere to another, whereas others become anchored to a specific sector. I do not deny that in the lower etheric realm, which overlaps the denser astral plane, the negative forces have created focuses which are largely responsible for much of mankind's current and past distress. From these mass entities, tentacles of sinister thought forms and demons reach out to control mankind, including the children of the light, with elements of human discord, seducing them by addiction, astral enslavement, and sheer viciousness, which are further amplified and manipulated against people's own best interests in the false hierarchy of the planet. Brothers of the shadow, impostors who oppose the legions of light. Bear well in mind that men and women are also responsible for this, their own untoward creation. Due to this original departure from the voice of truth in the garden of God, a free will choice for which they alone are accountable, they begin to weave cause and effect sequences outside the circle of oneness. And ever since, their children and their children's children have reaped unhappy situations and deleterious conditions which affect their souls, their livelihoods, and families. Most distressingly, when they ever so often make contact with this lower etheric or memory level, where old, untransmuted evils gather as floating grids and force fields of mankind's negative momentums. Such contacts are triggered by many situations common to everyday life, everything from family arguments to violence on TV, horror movies, rock music, drug usage and astral connections through addictions, gambling, cavorting with spirits, dabbling in witchcraft, or making UFO personalities in science fiction their gods. Although considered harmless as innocent fun or pastimes, these activities, as well as mankind's endless fascinations with symbols of death and sex, favorite topic of the tabloids, the soaps, subliminal advertising, and thriller movies, do hold their energies captive to the astral plane and the adepts of control who, in or out of embodiment, make the lower etheric their territory. Attention is the key, for where man's attention goes, there goes his energy, and he himself can only follow. Children of Earth's first godparents, attention. If you would rise in spiritual attainment and in the God mastery of your life, you must go to the mountain of God and fast from all of these distractions to your true selfhood, which derives from the universal one. If you could self transcend the planes of human suffering in order to aid your fellow creatures, you must be willing to part with painful pleasures which you know deep down inside are destroying your very soul by your own free will consent, and place your attention on your I Am presence. The ascended masters beckon the compassionate souls to confront the astral evil energy veil that besets the unwary who are daily falling before the four horsemen. Revelation 6 1-8. The deadly illusions and adepts of the black arts to which the race have fallen prey must be challenged by the alert alchemist and spiritual benefactors of the race, whom I have called to world service as keepers of the flame and organized under the fraternal order bearing my sponsorship. I actually became a keeper of the flame on Saturday, so I am only 5 days into being a keeper of the flame, but yeah, loving that. And if you're interested, then that you came here to do too. If you are, let me know. I'd be glad to help as best as what I can, though I'm new, but Michael's helping me and he'd be glad to help you too. You may wonder why I bring all these things to your attention. It is because your souls have cried out for freedom, and the God of very gods has sent me to tell you that you will find it only by your acceptance of the whole truth and holy wisdom. Therefore, consider well my words in this little book, for the hour is late, and another may not come to knock again upon the door of your heart. Now, if all of the etheric levels were manifesting absolute perfection, do you not think, blessed ones, that this perfection, being as close as your own memory and the memory of the planetary body, would not long ago have changed the world of effect so much so that only perfection would manifest on earth? Therefore, to accomplish the realignment of the soul with the living spirit of the Lord, there is a need to make continuous corrections of a kind that adjust the set of the sail by the compass of life, self-corrections of major and minor deviations from life that detour bit by bit the spirit of a man and his helpmeet and their offspring. And it is the better part of holy wisdom that I reveal it here, in order that you may participate in the recreation of worlds within and without by the science of the spoken word, in partnership with the heavenly hosts. Let the extremes of light and darkness, absolute good and the evil one, hold no terror for any. For one moment before I spoke to you or read these facts, they are and had been for centuries. Our concern is that by Christ's illumination, the mists of error shall not remain as a controlling or dominant force in your life in the world of form, but that the chains of all such blinding human deviltry shall be broken and replaced by divine direction from the highest reaches of your own immortal God-free being. These facts concerning astral focuses of human discord already fully known by you at subconscious levels, which I now bring to your waking attention, must keep you on guard mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. Of course, there are also radiant celestial focuses of divine harmony, almost without number. These are presently accessible to the sweet children of the light and sons and daughters of God in the highest etheric levels. Wondrous temples of music exist where celestial tones unknown, unheard today upon the entire planet resound from advanced instruments possessing the quality or possessing the capacity for almost infinite harmony. There are temples of beauty presided over by Paul the Venetian and other ascended masters, some from other systems of worlds. Paintings, tapestries, statuary, artistic forms, and planetary records on exhibit, also from this and other systems, are preserved in these great temples, museums, and universities of the spirit in the etheric levels of this planet. And by now, I think you have guessed that there are also treasuries of wisdom, including the inventions and scientific achievements preserved from Earth's past golden ages, stored in these halls of learning and I'm okay. Let me try again. And by now, I think you have guessed that there are also treasuries of wisdom, including the inventions and scientific achievements preserved from Earth's past golden ages, stored in these halls of learning and spiritual centers, where responsive and responsible souls may study, either between embodiments to prepare for a future mission in the next life, or presently through soul travel out of the body during sleep or samadhi. The latter subject I have reserved for the keepers of the flame lessons, for your exercises in soul travel require our close attention and guardian action. But let us now face certain facts of man's being, fundamental to the quest for the grail of self knowledge in the etheric octave. For by determined self mastery in the first steps, he may arrive at the portal of opportunity for world service. Ooh, wow. So that is wisdom. It would be 8 more pages for us to complete the chapter, which would take us probably another 15 minutes if you want to stick around. It's always nice to finish out the chapter, though there's the part of me that says it would be good to start with wisdom next week again too, because I do begin these classes on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I would love for you to be able to come back again next week, where we will be talking about love. And in the next 15, I'm just going to finish out Wisdom's Way by the Threefold Flame. The mere acquisition of knowledge without the wisdom to discriminate it in its without the wisdom to discriminate in its use, as we have noted, is not productive of the right kind of fruit, but often becomes a wholly ego-centered activity. Wherefore, when the flame of wisdom is utilized by a life stream, invoked from the heart of his own beloved God presence, and the dross of wrong thinking colored by human emotion is burned out of the cells of the mind and the lower mental body, then the way is cleared for a flow of great wisdom into man's consciousness and use. To tap the resources of the cosmic universities, men need pure hearts. We do not deny that the violent rebels against the cause of Almighty God have taken heaven by force. Yes, I've done that with all of my insanity that taught me not to do such things. Matthew 11:12. Taking the gates of heaven by force are when you use drugs to reach states of enlightenment unnaturally, which I had done the DMT ceremonies in 2019 before I kind of had a lot of unintegrated energies to integrate that I did in a very painful way, because I chose the left-handed path of wrong action in order to get where I wanted to go. And at the beginning of this, if you weren't there at that point, I found out today that last night, a friend and another young woman passed from a drug overdose, which just seems to be happening so much more now than ever before because of all of the pain that we're all feeling and not necessarily knowing how to deal with. And it's just like, you found these teachings because there is a better way. And we don't have to storm the gates of heaven by force, as I learned in order to be able to say, there's a better way. But I'll go back. We do not deny that the violent rebels against the cause of Almighty God have taken heaven by force, as has been said, piercing the veil by psychic means, drugs, satanic rite, and the black arts. They have penetrated beyond the strata of the ordinary, at times employing various chemicals, herbs, and human pharmacopoeia in order to escape the realm of the present self and present karmic responsibilities, yet finding but temporal reward for their stealing of forbidden fruit, for the law does not allow them to keep their ill-gotten gains. Let me point out that the way to paradise lost, the way to the Garden of Eden and the tree of life can be found by legitimate and wholesome means. Genesis 2:9, 3:24, Revelations 2:7, 22, 2, and 14. Whereby the satisfactions of soul mastery and personal integrity, integration with the whole, are achieved each step of the way. This is a part of holy wisdom, for merely to acquire power without understanding the meaning of justice and mercy, as I have long stressed, is an error for which the life stream is fully accountable both here and hereafter. Inasmuch as mankind's karma holds them accountable for so much already, I see no reason why they should further complicate matters by acquiring power without acquiring the wisdom to properly apply it, and the love to restrain its selfish abuse. And therefore I choose to make certain suggestions here and now that I believe will afford souls of light and alchemists on the path entree into a higher spiritual realm, as well as their proper use of God's energy here and now in the blessing of all in this perilous physical octave. Some of you are aware of the fact that the threefold flame, which is being interpreted in part in this trilogy, is only 1/16 of an inch high within the average human heart. It is made up of a blue plume, a yellow plume, and a pink plume of radiant God-charged electronic light. Each plume is a manifest focus of God qualities. The blue plume of spiritual power relates to faith, goodwill, and the divine intent. The yellow plume of divine wisdom relates to illumination, and the right use of power. The yellow plume of divine wisdom relates to illumination and to the right use of knowledge, the expansion of the intelligence of the Godhead into the chaliced heart and mind of the earnest aspirant to godliness. The pink plume of divine love is the crown of life, which provides a permeation of the qualities of mercy, compassion, justice, and creativity. Divine love as radiant light is also the crown of God's happiness, which he sheds forth by his mighty light, rays throughout the universe, whether the universe is aware of it or not. Let me point out that the sunshine yellow plume or sunburst of divine illumination that is within everyone, released through the south arm of the Maltese Cross as the pivot between the positive and negative arms of the cross, is the secret key by which man can unfold his own wisdom flame. This central plume of the tripartite flame of life must be consciously expanded within heart and mind through invocation to the I Am presence. For as the animating principle of God's own mind, it is given freely for the use of all who will make the call in the name of the Christ. By visualizing its golden yellow radiance passing through one's four lower bodies many times daily, the devotee initiates the process of burning out the accretion of negation and density, purifying the mind, feelings, and memory, reinforcing therein the revitalizing electronic power of vital truth. As he joyously assimilates wisdom's fires, These displace and consume the dross of erroneous thoughts and feelings previously assembled in the human mind that prevent the flow of light through the human consciousness and, until transmuted, remain the enemy of every man seeking God illumination. Send for prayers, meditations, and dynamic decrees for personal and world transformation. A handbook of daily invocations to the sacred fire you can use to command the flow of God's power, wisdom, and love through your heart for the alchemy of positive change. Use precise formulas of the word. Use precise formulas of the word to balance and expand your threefold flame. Transmute the records of past lives that are often the cause of current physical and emotional burdens. Free yourself from unwanted habits and direct God's healing light into community, national, and world problems. Summit University Press has published a number of books and recordings on the creative power of sound. And for more information, or to place an order, you can contact Summit Lighthouse. The number listed here is 1-800-245-5445 or 406-848-9500. Jesus said, "A man's foes shall be they of his own household." Matthew 10:36. And no more motley household has ever been assembled than a man's own wrong thoughts. It is not necessary to pull up the weeds of those wrong thoughts all at once, for the wheat may easily be removed along with the tares. Matthew 13:24-30 and 36-43. However, it is essential to recognize that some degree of reappraisal and self-examination is constantly necessary if one is to retain the true alchemist's objectivity and standard of perpetual progress on the path. Because it was announced years ago that a number of black magicians had been removed from the planet, some students were of the opinion that the world was then completely freed of the emanation of embodied evil. When cosmic unity and harmony exist everywhere, when criticism, condemnation, and judgment have ceased, when celestial happiness penetrates the world and all strife is ended, I may agree. But for the time being, the presence of many more black magicians who by free will have chosen the left-handed path is apparent in the outplaying of atrocities on a world scale, alongside of pleasure cults and rituals of darkness tempting psychic suicide. All this is fast motion as you read my very words. So goes the world. Allah, 1984. Refers to George Orwell's book 1984, published in 1949 and made into a movie in 1955, produced by N. Peter Rathbone, and in 1984, produced by Simon Perry. By their fruits ye shall know them. Matthew 7:20, is the criterion to be applied to the international scene as well as to the individual. People may hide for a while behind a mask of perfection, but the great unfailing light of God penetrates behind all masks and brings each one to judgment. There is no escape from evil karma except to turn from it and do well. Let every man be aware, then, that it is his duty and responsibility to nurture self-concern. For by concern for himself as to what thoughts he shall admit to his mind and what motives and feelings he shall allow to tarry in the chamber of his heart, he is able to purify that mental world of his and to guard it by purity's flame in such a manner as to be of greater benefit and service to others. Indeed, can the blind lead the blind? As the Master Jesus said, shall they not both fall into the ditch? Luke 6:39. By a forthright will and willingness reinforced by the decree of your word, remove then all barriers in your being and consciousness that you know impede the flow of the God flame of illumination. Use the violet purple flame of freedom. Welcome it into every atom and cell of your world. Each day, ask your God presence for greater wisdom and for an increase of the flame of illumination, and its right use. In the name of the Christ and by the threefold flame within your heart, demand of your great God self a balanced state of power, wisdom, and love, and see what life will do for you. We've got 3 more pages. We're almost there. Balanced achievement, the way of mastery. Imbalance, where gigantism occurs in one aspect of the threefold flame, causing it to be out of proportion with the others, prevents the achievement of daily goals as well as the goal of individual Christ mastery. As the tangible, balanced flame of illumination expands from within your consciousness, it gradually unfolds your being until God, as holy wisdom, is enthroned upon the altar of your heart. But with each increase of wisdom, the power and love plumes must also rise by the fiat of your devotion to goodwill, else wisdom's gain will not be retained. Likewise, with each getting of power, there must come the attainment of wisdom and love in perfect complement. So too, love is actualized only through an equivalency of power and wisdom. Recognizing that balance is the golden key to Christhood, you will understand that you cannot know for yourself nor bring into manifestation that which you have not first realized within the realm of your outer and inner experience in God. Such experiences become ultimately meaningful, beautiful, when woven through the rhythm of the balanced threefold flame. This accounts for the differences expressed in men's employment of the faculties of mind and heart. While some have denied themselves the graces of heaven, others, the so called ignorant or uneducated, are not necessarily bereft of the blessings of holy wisdom. Neither do the learned always receive them as a little child. For holy wisdom is imparted not only through study in an outer sense, but also through attunement in an inner sense with the great spiritual powers of light, God free beings, and circles of initiates who live and move and breathe the sacred fire breath in the higher octaves. Masters of the Far East and those who have risen from ancient temples of Lemuria and South America frequent the retreats of the Great White Brotherhood on the highest etheric planes, receiving, as the law allows, those who mount the spiral staircase of the degrees to seek and find their abode of the Spirit. That men need not wait until they have passed from the screen of life to obtain a greater divine wisdom should be a source of great happiness to all who read these words. It is true, in fact, that for those who do not successfully attain the goal of the ascension at the close of this embodiment, their succeeding incarnation will be enriched through present diligence to precepts herein imparted. And let me assure you that for those who do attain the goal, whatever is done in God's name today is the achievement of eternity. Nothing divine is ephemeral. Nothing divine is ephemeral, nor can it be taken from anyone. All divine blessings are permanent, and this is their wondrous inherent quality. With all thy getting, let it not be the mere fretting away of the hours. With so many waiting at the portals of birth, yearning to breathe the planetary air even though polluted, and to bask in the sunlight here, let those who have this opportunity to right all wrong, to obtain entrance into the eternal kingdom, to overcome error, to enthrone the rightful deity, and to challenge every false opinion, accept from the Godhead the scepter of their own wisdom's dominion. None can obtain who will not try, none can obtain who lack faith. All who will can summon the holy energies and glorify God in that feeling of infinite happiness that comes to those who cherish the outpouring of love's radiance in its balanced threefold flame of power, of wisdom, and of love which abideth forever. Most graciously I am, Saint Germain. Amazing. Well, read a book at the Oaks. No, thank you. And we're going to be reading Love next week. And so if you show up and it's not what you want, then choose something else because we have free will. And my will is to read Saint Germain on Alchemy. And I'll come back again next week at 7 o'clock again. So feel free to join. And ultimately, I send love and blessings to you who has a heart to receive it. And you who does not, please know that it is a reflection that is simply a mirror. I am a mirror to you, and I can't see you, though in some ways you are a mirror to the former part of myself that chose to step out of my comfort zone in order to do a video that attracted people that may not be at the level that this is. So ultimately, it's just a matter of where we are, and what resonates, take that. What doesn't, leave it. If you keep coming back for more, that's on you. And ultimately, it's because there's so much more than just the physical, carnal aspect of that which you would like to see. So I send love and look forward to coming back again next week. If you are available on Sunday and would like to come together for the reading of Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, for the final week, we're actually going to be finally getting into recovering a sense of faith. So it is non-dogmatic, not religious, but certainly it's been a very valuable study experience to go through in the reading of that all this year so far on Sundays. That's at 10:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So look forward to having you who feel inclined come join me for that experience. And we'll look forward to hopefully reading Love with you next week on Thursday at 7 as well. And wish you a wonderful night. Toodaloo. Peace out or peace in. Laura J. Namaste. Thank you.